Lord.
Could probably hear without it anyways, I think, but since we have it, thank you. Well, I actually wrote down what I wanted to say tonight. Those of you who know me know that I recently picked up a stray puppy in Hollow Water, and if anybody's ever tried to think around a little puppy, it's quite a bit like having a baby. So I really wanted to give some thought to what I wanted to share tonight, because it's really hard to condense 10 years, like Anna said, into a short presentation. So here we go. When I thought about having to work to support this campaign and the blockade at Grassy Narrows for the last 10 years, it became more and more clear what I really wanted to share with you in these 10 or 15 minutes. I started to think in terms of the chronology of events, and I realized I couldn't possibly tell you about all or even most of them. And all that background is online, and you can find it at various websites that we'll tell you about towards the end. I thought also about the goals, strategies, networks, and tactics that the Boreal Forest Network, the Friends of Grassy Narrows, also known as the Winnipeg Indigenous Peoples Solidarity Movement, and others, used, and how we worked or continue to work, because the campaign is not over, and no matter what we achieve, we will always have to be vigilant. What I keep coming back to is something Judy always exemplifies, and that is speaking from the heart. These are the memories that strike me the most. At the Tiger Rescue Network biannual meeting of campaigners from all around the world's boreal forest, which I came to the Boreal Forest Network to organize in the year 2000, I remember Judy, her husband, and her then 4 children having dinner in the dining hall and thinking that she had the most perfectly behaved children in the world. I was hoping she'd hear that. I don't think she's thinking that right now. But while I knew that Judy was there because there were issues about encroachment on Grassy's traditional territory, I saw her first as a mother at a dining room table with her children. And incidentally, those international connections paid off. Not only did some of those campaigners visit Grassy, they also passed petitions and grouped sign-ons and posted information to their websites. And my favorite, they phoned and faxed the Kenora MNR in the middle of the first night of the blockade. And that was to tell them the world was watching. I would have loved to see the faces in that office, wondering how big organizations in Sweden and Germany and Russia knew that there were logging trucks at the remote Slant Lake in the middle of the night. One of the first things Judy ever said to me was that she couldn't sit back and watch truckloads of logs go by their house in front of her children, especially her daughter Tina, who was getting old enough to question it, and do nothing. She had to act. As a mother. I later learned that her children were actually quite normal, but they do have exceptional parents, and none of those children could ever accuse Judy of not doing enough. It was and is the same reason that I do what I do. I can't not. I'm a mother and a grandmother, and this is something that I could relate to and respect Judy for right from the beginning. I've found many, many more reasons over the last 12 years to respect Judy. I know that she didn't take this stand alone, but she has been a guiding force, and she's been a heartbeat behind the Grassy Blockade and anti-logging and development campaign since the beginning. So I begin with the place that the heart is, and the thought that we do this for the children and for the generations to come. There have been births and deaths in the last 10 years. Judy now has Tajay, her blockade baby, and Joe Redsky, whom I first met, very pregnant, at the blockade site in the middle of winter, in an Ontario winter at that, now has 3 children. And there are a few who have departed that I need to tell you about. The late Dave Brophy is another one who was driven to help out of a heartfelt compassion for his fellows. Dave and I got to know each other at first cautiously, early in the blockade days. Dave was suspicious of environmentalists. His concern was the people's concern, and he wasn't sure what my or our take on it would be. He learned that BFN wasn't just an environment group and that we were to be depended upon to support Indigenous rights. But he was right to be assured of this and to be concerned about it. Not all groups are oriented that way. They have boards to deal with, often people who have never been to the place they're working to protect or met the people. They have budgets, mandates, and reports to funders, and they can't always commit to the long haul. At BFN, we're in a good position to do this because we have a small supportive board. We only take support from individual contributors, so we aren't really beholden to funders. And we're also not a charity, so we don't have to worry about reporting to the tax people the small percentage that they allow you to campaign. The blockaders were clear from the beginning that this was and is their campaign, and that our support, while invaluable, is exactly that, it's support. That way, as some of the players have come and gone and contributed what they can at a critical moment, Grassy is not dependent on them. And to me, this is an extremely critical Indigenous support model. The Friends of Grassy Narrows is one of Dave's legacies. Again, he didn't do it alone, no more than Judy did, but without him, it might not have happened. Thor and I, among others, have been members at large since the group was formed, and we've since changed the name to the Winnipeg Indigenous Peoples Solidarity Movement to better represent the expansion of our work into other community supports. But we've retained the same principles, and that our work is to support communities with issues around resource extraction and other types of industrial activity on their traditional territory. I credit Judy, Chickadee Richards, and Betty Maud with cementing my relationship with Dave, which became as solid as they come, really, and blossomed into a true friendship. These women told Dave and I that they had an idea to do a sacred walk from the four directions and to meet in Winnipeg. They asked Dave and I to work together to have supporters meet them at the outskirts of the city and walk in solidarity into Winnipeg. People walked from as far away as Grassy Narrows into the city with children the first time. They envisioned a gathering rally and a meeting of the minds afterwards where walkers from different communities could meet and collaborate and share their stories. And that was the birth of the 7th generation walk for Mother Earth, which is now going into its 10th year, always the closest Sunday to April 22nd. One thing I learned from that collaboration, and I've shared this in England and Brussels and Munich and other places with other activists, is that people don't form relationships with organizations. They form relationships with people. Organizations vary from the grassroots groups like ours to large charities and not-for-profits, and the groups that supported Grassy in different ways range from one end of the spectrum to the other. Dave left us, but he also brought us together through his work and through our communal grief at his loss, which we shared with his mother, Heather Brophy. We planted a tree with Heather in Dave's memory at the blockade site. Last year I sent her photos of that tree, which is now part of the forest, which has taken back part of the clearing at one end of the blockade site. On the 7th generation walk, we gave Judy the proceeds of a memorial fund in Dave's name to write a book about her experiences, which you will get to read eventually. People in the community have taken a lot of different approaches to protecting the land. Through the legal case, which went on for 11 years and is now in appeal, and in teaching young people skills before they're lost and forgotten. The Boreal Forest Network supports all of these goals. Our niche is that we've always taken our direction from the blockaders. Another one we've lost along the way played more of a cameo experience in the Grassy story, but nonetheless it was an important role that he played. The late Gary Raven and former BFNer Don Sullivan played a little-known role in getting the now well-known legal case underway. The Superior Court of Ontario has ruled that the province of Ontario has no jurisdiction to allocate resources from Grassy's territory. As you know, that hasn't stopped them from continuing to log while appealing the decision. Large multinational logging companies don't easily take no for an answer. Nonetheless, it is an important victory, and it could set precedents for other Treaty 3 communities. What you don't know is that the late Gary Raven of Ravens Creek Hollow Water First Nation and Don Sullivan got together with Judy what must have been 12 years ago now, and Gary shared what he thought was a legal argument for Grassy. They came up with a lawyer's name and got an anonymous donor on the phone who gave the first $10,000 to get the case started. 11 years after the case was launched, and after much work by others, the court agreed with them. Another early contribution from the Boreal Forest Network was in the chain of custody work we did to find out where the trees were going that Abitibi was taking out of Grassy, and in what products they were. We discovered that a major newspaper in Minneapolis, the Tribune, was made from Grassy trees, and that it was owned by a family named McClatchy. A reporter named Tom Knutson from the Sacramento Bee was working on a report called The State of Denial, which is available online. It was published in 2003, and I highly encourage you to read it. It explored the impacts of consumerism and not in my backyard campaign results, and it connected the dots to where consumer resource products were sourced from. It's an in-depth report, and that's quite rare. He began by raising questions about the publicly supported campaign that stopped drilling for oil off the California coast and pointed out that the demand for gasoline had increased to 38 million gallons a day, while folks were saying they didn't want to get the oil off their own coast. It led to oil development wiping out whole villages of indigenous people in Ecuador and other places where poverty overshadows environmental concerns. We invited Tom here, and we worked with him on some of the Canadian boreal research. He had discovered that the McClatchy Company was also the parent company of the Sac Bee. So this was one of the nails in the Abitibi-Grassy coffin. Pressure was put to bear on the McClatchys, which over time resulted in some cancelled contracts and pressure brought to bear on the company. These actions and the combined efforts of many dedicated and talented people eventually got Abitibi out of Grassy, but the story doesn't end there. The problem is when you kill one giant, another often rises, just like in a video game. In this case, it's Weyerhaeuser Forest Products. They're logging the remaining estimated 30% of the Whiskey Jack's traditional land, and while the legal action is under appeal. We have to remember that this is a lifetime occupation to shift a paradigm. We're not going to just stop, stick our finger in a hole and stop it here and there. We really have to change the whole picture. We've launched a boycott campaign of all Weyerhaeuser products, and we need each of you to step up, sign it, tell people about it, ask builders, contractors, and suppliers to stop buying Weyerhaeuser products until they get out of the Whiskey Jack. A boycott campaign takes a great deal of public support to be meaningful. You can find the petition link at borealforestnetwork.com, and you can read all about that in more detail there, or ask questions after if you wish. At the same time, we need to enjoy our life and our family and our friends, and we've become like family, working together with such heartfelt concern. We share food, we dance at the powwow, we even play karaoke at 30 below on the blockade. Our computers froze watching movies, and I'm not kidding. Our children know each other, and they're always on Facebook together. And my message is really that we have to work hard to make change, but there's also joy and laughter and community. We have to preserve and nurture these and not just the land. Without them, we have nothing. There's a lot of laughter and generosity in Grassy Narrows, and I'll always have a very special place in my heart for that community. Judy has always said that the way that you can most get involved is to come out there, and you'll be welcomed with the same generosity that the rest of us were. Thank you.